Welcome to the AI Research Roundup. I'm Alex. Today we're looking at a paper trending on X, published on January 26, 2026, about 5 days ago. It introduces a brain-inspired architecture that achieves 97% accuracy on long-range dependency tasks, while using roughly 15 times fewer parameters than standard transformers. The paper is titled Resonant Sparse Geometry Networks, and as we'll see later, the implications for reducing computational complexity are quite significant. So, Figure 1 illustrates the biological principles driving this new architecture. On the top left, the diagram shows the resonant sparse geometry network, where nodes sit in a hyperbolic disk to support input-dependent routing. This means tokens ignite specific spark points that only activate relevant neighbors. The right side highlights the two timescale learning approach, fast gradients for immediate updates, and slow Hebbian learning, which mimics how biological synapses strengthen when neurons fire together. Finally, the bottom panel maps these concepts to the model's layers, tracing the signal from the ignition module to the classifier output. Well, if Figure 1 gave us the biological motivation, Figure 2 maps out the actual system architecture. Input tokens enter from the left and inject into the central hyperbolic embedding space, creating spark points that ignite specific local neighborhoods. This generates the sparse activation patterns we see in the center. On the top right, the model separates learning into two timescales: fast gradient descent and slow Hebbian plasticity. Finally, the bottom right inset details the geometry, showing how tree-like hierarchies are embedded so that node distance controls connection strength. Alright, having seen the system design, Table 1 now compares its performance against standard baselines on the hierarchical classification task. The top row shows the transformer model leading in raw accuracy at roughly 30%. However, the RSGN variants directly below it remain competitive at nearly 24%. The critical difference appears in the third column, where the transformer requires over 400,000 parameters. By contrast, RSGN uses only about 41,000 parameters, which makes it 10 times smaller, while still significantly outperforming the random baseline. Okay, sticking with the results. Table 3 breaks down which specific components drive that performance through an ablation study. The top row reveals an interesting trend. The smaller configuration with 128 nodes actually achieves the highest accuracy at 24.4%. By comparison, the bottom row shows that scaling up to 512 nodes drops performance to 23.6%, likely due to overfitting on this dataset. We also see near the bottom that removing Hebbian learning reduces accuracy, confirming that the structural plasticity mechanism provides a meaningful boost. So, while the previous table focused on raw numbers, Table 4 maps the technical components back to their biological inspirations. The left column lists specific mechanisms in the resonant sparse geometry network, and the right column identifies their natural counterparts. For instance, sparse ignition mimics sparse coding in the sensory cortex, while local inhibition functions like lateral inhibition. Moving down the list, Hebbian plasticity corresponds directly to synaptic plasticity. Finally, the bottom rows show how the hyperbolic embedding captures cortical hierarchy and how reward modulation parallels dopaminergic signaling. Alright, switching gears to the learning process, Figure 7 plots the training dynamics over 50 epochs. On the left, the training curves show a dramatic contrast. The sparse transformer in pink and standard transformer in blue shoot up to near-perfect accuracy. However, the right panel reveals the validation performance, where the sparse transformer collapses, indicating severe overfitting. By comparison, the RSGN models in teal and orange show a very small gap between training and validation, confirming the architecture generalizes well despite having far fewer parameters. Well, Figure 7 highlighted the generalization gap. Now, Figure 8 brings all the experimental results together into a single summary. Panel A on the left shows that while the standard transformer leads in classification accuracy, the resonant sparse geometry networks remain very competitive. In the middle, Panel B confirms the model performs well on long-range dependencies, achieving over 96% accuracy. Finally, Panel C on the right drives home the efficiency advantage. The scatter plot places the new architecture in the top left, delivering high accuracy with a tiny fraction of the parameters required by the transformer on the far right. Wrapping up, two takeaways stand out. Biologically inspired designs can effectively challenge the massive computational costs of standard transformers, and they do so with drastically fewer parameters. This points toward a sustainable future for AI on resource-constrained devices. That's it for this episode of the AI Research Roundup. I'm Alex. Thanks for listening.